What's up YouTube, this is GalacticGod, and I'm coming at you today with a video to talk about the deck size of Yu-Gi-Oh! And whether or not it should be changed. Now quite recently I was up on Facebook and I was in one of those Yu-Gi-Oh! Discussion groups, and we were talking about ways that Yu-Gi-Oh! Could be improved, and somebody brought up changing the minimum deck size from 40 to 60. Now of course, as you can imagine, quite a bit of different duelists had different opinions on whether or not this would be a good or bad thing within the game. And some people brought up how other TCG card games, such as Magic the Gathering for example, do have a minimum deck size of 60. But I would argue that the reason for that is because those type of games are usually resource based, meaning you do have to have a certain amount of cards within your deck devoted to being just resources so that you can get your other cards and plays off. Yu-Gi-Oh! On the other hand is not a resource-based type of game. You don't typically have to have certain cards on the field in order to activate other cards or summon certain monsters. Now there are weird archetypes out there within the game that do require you to have a certain combination of cards on the field first before you can summon a certain monster or perform a certain kind of combo or play or whatever, but it's not exactly the same thing as having land out on the field in Magic and then tapping it in order to actually summon out your monsters or whatever. I think if games like Magic the Gathering had a 40 card minimum deck size and you had to have so much of that devoted towards land type resources, it would drastically change the way the game is actually played. So because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is considered to be, or at least I consider it to be, a much more fast-paced game than Magic the Gathering, that is why it can function pretty well with a 40 card deck minimum. Now I'm not saying I'm completely opposed to changing the minimum deck size. I think it would be really interesting to see how much the game changed if the deck size minimum was switched to 50 cards or even 60 cards per deck. I think at that point archetypes that don't have a huge amount of cards within them will really struggle in order to make a playable build. So for example, maybe a deck like UAs who don't have a whole lot of monsters and spells at their disposal within that archetype would find it really hard in order to build a complete deck out of 60 cards. But on the flip side of things, archetypes that have a huge amount of monsters and spells and traps at their disposal will definitely flourish within a higher deck count. So maybe, for example, decks like Mermails would do extremely well in an era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Which required a 60 card minimum type of deck. So in the comment section below, let me know your guys' thoughts on this subject. Do you think Yu-Gi-Oh! Should stay at a 40 card minimum, or do you think that needs to be up to like 50 or 60 or something like that? And I guess that's it for now. This is GalacticGod, out.